Tonight, the key information police are looking for in their St. John's murder investigation.
The province's Auditor General has found that the very people who enforce the law aren't following their own policies and regulations.
Which is concerning since many RNC inventory items are highly sensitive and potentially dangerous if not managed properly.
We'll have more later in the show.
The future of the seafood industry comes with flashy, high-tech products like these. But there's also calls for sustainability and a blue economy. I'm Little Bodwell, and that story is coming up on Here and Now.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan. We have a slightly shorter 30-minute show followed by an encore presentation of Land and Sea for you tonight. But we begin with our top story. The province's Auditor General says the RNC is failing to properly manage the inventory and employee training. That doesn't mean there's fraud or theft happening in the force, but as Here and Now's Mark Quinn tells us, it does mean the force can't say if its members are getting the training they need or where all of the items the RNC owns or confiscates are located.
The RNC is expected to enforce the law, but the Auditor General says it's not following its own policies and procedures. Denise Hanrahan looked at two areas within the force. First, her office audited how the constabulary handles inventory, items like guns and things it recovers in investigations like drugs or jewelry. The second area it looked at was employee training.
I found they did not effectively manage those two areas, often failing to comply with their own policies and procedures.
The Auditor General found that sometimes the police force is failing to handle firearms in accordance with federal regulations. For example, the AG found that some officers had firearms even though there was no record showing they'd done the annual training that's required by federal law to possess those guns. In another example, confiscated jewelry was not found in the RNC Property Control Centre. It doesn't mean it was stolen, but the force had no record of what had happened to it.
What we found could indicate that there is an increased risk of loss, theft, or unauthorized access to various forms of inventories.
In her report, Hanrahan said the public expects the RNC to do better in light of the sensitive and often dangerous items in its possession. The Auditor General also found widespread problems with training.
The provision of training to staff generally didn't follow their own policy guidance, with 35% of training that was conducted during our 2-year audit period not considered complete.
For example, the audit found that training for stopping high-risk vehicles that is required by all officers every 3 years was not completed by more than 90% of officers, and almost 50% hadn't completed crisis intervention and de-escalation training.
There was a lack of compliance with mandatory training requirements, and almost every employee we examined was missing at least one mandatory training course.
Hanrahan says she's made 7 recommendations about how the police can fix these problems, and she says the police force has accepted all of those recommendations. She says her office will follow up with them to see if those recommendations are in fact followed. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
The chief of the RNC says it will take less than 2 years for him to make those changes called for by the Auditor General. Pat Roach told me they've already begun that work.
As a result of some of the issues found or identified within our Property Control Centre and our Quartermaster's Inventory Centre, we've implemented a new electronic system in 2023, December thereof 2023. Across the island, we've brought in Corner Brook and Labrador on those systems. We've hired additional physical staff in the Corner Brook region to look after the Property Control Centre and our Quartermaster store.
I want to ask about training, because one of the things they identified is there is a lot of mandatory training that people haven't done. Why is that happening?
So mandatory as opposed to required, and I think it comes back to looking at our policies and the wording in our policy as to, and that's what we're doing. We've hired a staff person to look at, a policy analyst, to review all policy affiliated with training and to update it and to bring it into this day and age, shall we say, as to what is mandatory versus required.
Well, speaking of the RNC, it's still looking for information from the public following a shooting death last week. 48-year-old Corey Snook has been charged with first-degree murder in the death of 30-year-old Terry Griffin. The shooting happened on Salter Place in the west end of St. John's, prompting a shelter-in-place order for residents in that area. Despite an arrest, Constable James Cadigan says the investigation is far from over. Police are now looking for any videos from Salter Place, Columbus Drive, and Grossmorn Place from the morning of July 24th.
Interviews are ongoing, with 24 completed at this point. Multiple judicially authorized searches of properties have been completed. Video review is ongoing. Forensic services officers are engaged in the collection of exhibits. This is very much an active investigation.
A man set for trial on 72 counts of sexual violence now wants all of those charges thrown out. The allegations against Tony Humby go back 20 years and involve dozens of young people. Humby was initially arrested in 2023. His trial was supposed to begin last year, but was postponed when he changed lawyers. It was rescheduled to run from March to May of this year, but has been held up by pretrial applications filed by the defense. Now, Humby's lawyers say it's taken too long, and they want the proceedings stopped because of unfair delays. The matter is due back in court next month. The future of fish processing is turning high-tech and global, but how will that impact this province and the jobs in the processing plants? The CBC's Leila Baudouin takes a look at how to sustain the local fishery in a global market.
It'll go to 0. Green light means feed me.
The Yamato scale came from Japan and weighs and sorts fillets with ease. This robotic shrimp processor is nearly human-free.
Drop the shrimp into the funnel on top.
A quick trip down a conveyor belt and voila.
Airtight, which they say is a bonus because then you're not actually shipping air.
It may feel a world away from plants of Newfoundland and Labrador, where people, not machines, handle the product. It's a delicate job, but this futuristic tech promises to prepare it all. From caviar to ready-made sushi.
We make this sushi in Japan.
Here on the floor of the Seafood Expo, companies are soaking it up, getting up to speed on favorite flavors and trends on the rise.
What we have here are our seafood plugs.
Like these seafood soups and sauces from PGI Foods in Boston.
Everybody likes hot stuff nowadays.
But Danny Dumaresque isn't getting too swept away. Rural communities remain top of mind, like Ramia on the south coast, where human hands are working to process urchin, char, scallops, lobster, and cod.
Well, what we gain from it is that we know we are supporting our local economy by keeping the jobs here for our plant workers and keeping meaningful income for our harvesters.
Ottawa calls it our blue economy, ocean innovation that considers climate change and economic growth, as well as the livelihoods of those living and working on the coast.
We need to be focusing on meeting the needs of coastal communities first and not last. And so that looks like, stewarding these coastal waters more responsibly and with a focus on meeting those needs before ramping up, industrial fishing to supply global markets.
And this marine fishery scientist believes it's the people who should help determine the next direction.
There needs to be more focus on, bringing in coastal communities into the fisheries management process and, reflecting what rebuilding fisheries and their waters means for them.
There's momentum taking off in Central. Plans to build a multi-million-dollar cold storage facility for live lobster like these, bound for Europe and Asia. It was all hands on deck in Boston. Provincial money set aside for market diversification, recently investing $12 million in the lobster industry, advancement in live storage, and getting lobster to market.
$5.75 million in new technology, processes, infrastructure, and innovation throughout that fishing industry. This, while Canada is building its blue economy framework, looking at both ocean wealth and ocean health. Two tides, not just the value of what's being produced, but the future of where seafood comes from. Leila Baudouin, CBC News.
Sports wouldn't exist without talented athletes, but volunteers also play a key role in making sporting events happen. That's no different for the Canada Games. Meet the Stenders, two key figures in the local track and field community for decades, and the father-daughter duo isn't showing any signs of slowing down.
Yo-Yo's jumping. Emily will follow. Alicia is getting ready.
Oh wow, that's going to be close.
We've been a track family growing up.
Yeah, you could say that.
In track and field this afternoon, this is action from the women's 4x100 meter relay.
I am a former athlete. I competed in the 81 and 85 Canada Games, and I've coached at 4 other Canada Games, and this will be my 5th as a coach.
The province of Newfoundland. My first was in 1977. I was on the coaching staff for the jumps.
Now here comes Newfoundland.
The next one came in 1985, and then 89 in Saskatoon, 93 in Brandon, Manitoba, and then London, Ontario. That was the last one where I coached. Good jump. This year at the Canada Games, I will be officiating the long jump and the high jump, and maybe the triple jump.
Now you're probably going to be the oldest.
Yes, no doubt I'll be the oldest, because even at the Nationals now, you won't see anyone 88 years old, right? Yes. Oh, I'm proud at my old age still to do it. 5:33. Boy, very consistent. Wow, wow, wow. I love it. I love to be out there in the sunshine and talk to the athletes and, you know, be fair in everything. And it's my life. Track is my life. Good jump. Nice. Beautiful height. Wow. Doesn't come much better.
He's definitely inspired a lot of athletes, and a lot of athletes to then become coaches and officials as well.
You could go down a touch.
So that's how you hopefully grow your sport. First as an athlete, and then hopefully a coach, and if not, an official.
Jennifer is a great coach and was a great athlete also, right? She held the record for over 23 years in the 400 meters. We've been volunteers now for so many years, and I think I really love to see her being involved and help out so much. Maybe it's natural that she is bound to be a coach, right?
It's pretty special that you guys have such like a connection through the sport, that you're both so into it.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that, or is it kind of just like a day in the life for you guys?
Just normal.
Yeah, I think
it's been for 47 years, I guess.
47 years we are.
When I first got
together,
involved.
right?
Yep.
4:43. I still hope to contribute for another few years, even though my age is very high. Good job. But I love to be out there with the athletes. Right? We are there for the athletes.
That's nice. 1302 Bethany.
The provincial fire ban has been lifted, but officials are urging caution when it comes to lighting fires. The ban came into effect earlier this summer because of a series of forest fires causing damage throughout the province. So be careful if you're lighting a fire as we head towards Regatta Evening. We'll be back with the forecast. Heather's here with the weather and some good news with the provincial fire ban lifting. And some more good news, I guess, with some rain for parts of the province to wet things down.
Yeah, that's right. So especially for the Northern Peninsula and the West Coast, and we're already picking some of that up on the satellite radar right now. So this is the story of the night to watch. We could see 15 to 30 millimeters of rain for the Northern Peninsula, 5 to 15 for parts of the West Coast, and a little bit less at about 5 for parts of the South Coast. Some showers possible for many other places, and we're seeing that on the future tracker as well. The meteorologists call this unsettled weather. It's a little bit hard to talk about because it's a little bit all over the place, except for those showers that we'll see on the West Coast and Northern Peninsula. As we go into tomorrow, we'll see cloudy skies. We will see a chance of showers for many places as well as we head into tomorrow evening. Taking a look now at our forecast for tonight for the island, temperatures really between 14 and 16 degrees for the most part, except for St. Anthony, where it will be 10 degrees. Light to southwesterly winds for much of the province at 20. We could, though, see some thunder showers, especially for Labrador West at 8 degrees, picking them up as well for the Corner Brook area, for the West Coast at 16 degrees, and we see them here for Cartwright as well. So there's something to watch for, a big rumble in the sky tonight. Our temperatures, though, across Labrador between 7 and 13 degrees in the Straits. Now, our forecast for the Royal St. John's Regatta. It's like Christmas Eve for rowers. I was just talking with the Environment Canada, and we were talking, of course, about the wind, because that is the predominant factor that the Royal St. John's Regatta Committee uses to make its decision about whether the regatta is going to be a go or a no-go. So you can see here that early in the morning, this is saying 17 to 19 for the winds, but I was talking to Environment Canada. They say that it could be a little lighter in the morning, maybe about 7, 8. So that's pretty favorable conditions. I've rowed for a long time. I'm not a meteorologist, but I can tell you the lay of the land at the lake, that's for certain. The Environment Canada folks are telling us that the winds will pick up, though, in the afternoon. Around lunchtime, 20 gusting to 30, and then maybe 40 a little bit later in the afternoon. But it's going to be good in the morning for a lot of the fast crews that go try to make their way into the championship races. Well, for the crews like the kids in the afternoon, it might be a little bit windy for them. So it's up to the Royal St. John's Regatta to make that call. But red light is, your unfavorable forecast. Is this where we're going to be? Probably not. Yellow, maybe. Green, especially with the winds being good in the morning. I don't make the decision, but I think it could be a good day for the regatta tomorrow. But we'll have to wait for that call tomorrow. For anybody heading to the Concerts Lakeside tonight or to Churchill Park, not a bad night. Cloudy, 23 degrees. Things will start to drop back a little bit as we go into the later hours of the evening. For the forecast tomorrow, chance of showers for many places in the island. Not too bad. 25 in St. John's with some sun and cloud. A little bit cooler up across Labrador. As we go on into our 5-day forecast now, it looks like we're going to have good days on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. As we move into central Newfoundland, our nice days will be on Saturday and on Sunday, and Friday as well, looking like a good stretch of weather for you folks. And we get a little bit more precipitation up across Labrador. And I'm going to leave you with this beautiful sunrise from Cape Spear. It comes to us from Mason Golding.
Thanks, Heather. There's thousands of dollars in damage at a waste recovery site in Harbour Grace. The Eastern Regional Services Board says an unknown number of individuals entered the site sometime between 4 p.m. Saturday and 8:30 a.m. Monday morning while the facility was closed. They used ropes tied to concrete barriers to haul a truck bed camper off of a vehicle and onto the ground. The weight and force of the camper caused the two barriers to shift out of place. They also smashed recently installed surveillance cameras and destroyed several on-site signs. The ERSB says the Harbour Grace facility has repeatedly been the target of vandalism in recent years, which has resulted in temporary closures, increased safety concerns, and costly repairs. An all-party committee released a report today looking at mental health, substance use, and addictions in the province. The committee worked in consultation with other politicians, stakeholders, and community members to come up with 10 key recommendations. Committee members spoke with reporters earlier today.
This touches every family across our province, including my own. So I do know personally how it affects many people and how it affects families. So the ease of access and early access getting into to possible treatment is what's first and foremost, no doubt. It is a time factor, it's a resource factor, it's a personnel factor. But having this report today enables us to make that first step and to continue the work that's needed to give people in the province access to the resources that's truly needed to give them the help that they need.
We know that there are still challenges and there's still much work to be done. And any individual who has those challenges in that particular time, we are hopeful that the best available service is there for them and that they can access it as quickly as possible. But we do realize that there are still some obstacles. So we're working on increasing our capacities in community as well as offering sites like this. So oftentimes somebody will just need a phone call, and that often an interaction with a counsellor virtually may be a solution. So if there's an opportunity to do things in community to bring these services closer to home for individuals, that's certainly something that we're interested in moving forward.
Well, and that brings us to the end of tonight's edition to Here Now, but stay tuned. We've got a special encore presentation of A Land and Sea. Jane Adey talks to people fighting to preserve traditional Newfoundland and Labrador crafts like quilt weaving and riddle fence making. We hope you can join us again tomorrow. As Heather mentioned earlier in the forecast, the weather in St. John's is looking pretty good. So if you're in town, we're keeping an eye on the weather and whether or not the regatta will go ahead. So that call will be tomorrow morning, bright and early, and there'll be live coverage on the regatta throughout the day. And of course, if you tune into CBC Radio tomorrow morning with the St. John's Morning Show, the CBC's Jenna Benchetrit will be lakeside for that early morning call. And of course, we'll have all the coverage for you tomorrow night on Here and Now. So thanks so much for joining us, keeping our fingers crossed that the winds aren't too strong and that the holiday in St. John's goes ahead. Have a good night, everyone.